So on nailing height and alignment, if you look in the AFA certification guide and talk to people, they want a descending line with your toenail being high and then working down from a maximum of 2/3 height to a minimum of 1/3 height. So your nailing line descends in that manner. What people don't think about when they talk about nailing height and especially nailing alignment is that it's a lot easier to drive a high nail on the medial aspect or the inside of the foot than it is on the lateral aspect. And so if you'll look at people's nailing height and alignment, what you'll normally see is they've got a fairly good height and alignment on each side, but from side to side it doesn't match up. And so what I do is, I'll back up. What I do when I'm working on a compliant animal, if I'm nailing up a pig, he's gonna get what he deserves. I don't care two shits about my nailing height and alignment. But if I've got a compliant animal that will cooperate with me, then what I will do is I typically drive my medial toenail first. I'll back up again. On a clipped shoe, I'll drive my toenails first and suck those clips back into the burn. On an unclipped shoe, I'll go to the wider part of my foot and drive my heel nails first, so I don't drag everything back and slide back off my toe. So first order of business is whether it's a clipped or an unclipped shoe. Since I hardly ever nail anything on that's not clipped, my normal practice is that I'll drive my medial toenail first, and I tap with my finger where I'm expecting that nail to come out. The minute I either hear it or feel it break through the wall, I stop. I go to my lateral toenail and I drive it and see if it's going to come out at that same place. If it's not coming out, if it's coming out lower or higher, then I'll pull it and start over and make my adjustment. So I want my medial nails and my lateral nails to be the same height. And that's what people miss out on all the time. You'll see a really pretty foot, and you get to looking at it close, and all the medial nails are 1/4 of an inch higher than the lateral nails. And so that's just something you got to account for and adjust for. But drive that nail until it breaks through the dorsal wall. The minute that it does, stop, go to the other side, and drive that nail. And if they're coming out at the same height, you got the same amount of nails sticking up above your shoe, you're good to go. And so that's the way I do it. If I need to make adjustments, I'm gonna cheat any way I can to get a nail higher or lower. We all know how to get a nail lower by fish hooking it or whatever. If I want to get it higher, it's more difficult, isn't it? So I want to get a nail higher that's coming out too low. I'm going to stick the bevel of that nail on the toe of my shoe, and I'm going to take the bevel out with my driving hammer. Does that make sense? So I'm going to take that bevel out, and that nail's going to come higher. So you want it to come out higher, change the bevel or the pitch on the end of the tip of that nail, and you can get it to come higher. You want it to come out lower, you're going to give it a little twist or a hook, fish hook the hell out of it, whatever. but you can make those adjustments. And if you're really gutsy and you need to drive one higher, turn it backwards, drive it about a third of the way, and then yank it out, give you a path to follow. But you got to watch how deep you're willing to do that. It'll come back and bite you on the ass if you're not careful. Does that help?
That does tremendously.
So that's just the other thing is, and you know, if you're competing or in a certification, you're always a little bit worried about how much you block and how much you've got a hole above your nail. But you, after a while, you get to where you know how to block to make an adjustment too. And you know, I'll block one nail off hard, I'll block another one off light, just because that's gonna adjust my height. And I'm talking, you know, just a little bit. It's not gonna make a huge difference. But you can block heavy or light to help get your height on those nails to look better. And sometimes you may need to come back with some filler and make sure that it doesn't show up that you've got a blocked one a little heavy. That to both sides of the foot. I'd just look at one side and say, oh, that's nice. I'd look at the other side and say, oh, that's nice. And then I'd go to the front and never notice that they were staggered down at my toenails, and I had low lateral, high medial. So looking at the big picture is important. What else?
I do a very thin wall thoroughbred. And whenever I block and clinch, it always seems, even though I feel like in my head I'm thinking, okay, pull them up, you know, pull up when you, but I always seem to drag it, you know, the nail down, and it's like, I don't know if it's because it's a thin-walled horse or it's just something I'm doing wrong, and I think I'm doing it right, but I'm not.
Thin-walled horses are a nightmare, and they'll just make you want to bang your head on the moon. If you're over blocking, you're going to do it. It's going to show up more on that thin-walled horse than it is on anything else, and so there are several ways to address that. Number one is I'm always going to choose the smallest nail I can get away with, and it's I mean, it's not unusual for me to nail on a number 2 shoe with an E4 or an E3. If I can get away with a smaller nail, I will. And on a thin-walled thoroughbred, I'm not going to pull out a Slim Blade 5 if I can pull out a Race 5, or a Plater Special or something of that sort. And so I think it's important to use the smaller nail on those horses, and you can take like a just hammer block instead of clinch block, and not actually brace off under, and then do a 2-stage clinch on top rather than a single-stage clinch. Does that make sense?
What's that 2-stage?
Okay, a 2-stage clinch, you're going to either use your pull-offs or your clinchers to angle that nail back to the position that you would have used your clinch block to do it.
Okay.
And then you're going to clinch it again.
Okay.
And
I do bend them down, you know,
so but it's very difficult to deal with these thin-walled horses, and
They're real bad. I'm actually not even clipped. I mean, I'm not blocking.
well,
If it's
yeah.
seated on the shoe good,
Yeah,
and come and pull it.
absolutely.
And then do 2-stage.
Yeah.
If you can keep the shoe on.
Yeah.
And if you have a problem with pulling the shoe, then you're going to probably have to go
And
block.
and what keeps the shoe on? Does a clinch keep a shoe on? I don't believe so. I mean, I think clinches are highly overrated. You know, you drive a blind nail that doesn't even come out. You come back in 5 weeks or 4 weeks, and it's still there, and it's still working. I think we overrate clinching, and what's going to hold that shoe on is the friction and the grip between the nail and the hoof wall, and it's also going to be tied to the fact that you started it in the white line instead of the outer wall, and so you go to a foot that you have got 5-6 weeks on that shoe, and you pull it off. Where are your nail holes wallered out?
Usually behind now.
Behind your nail and your
Third
number
nail.
3 hole,
Right.
and especially the number 3 medial hole, is going to have more rounded, more waller in it than any other spot. And so that's where your movement is, and that gets me to one of my pet peeves. It's a long foot. Right here, what happens right there? It's going to be where your quarter crack is, isn't it? That's your quarter. That quarter is, to me, one of the most important things that you will ever deal with in making a shoe or trimming a foot, because it's a joint. As far as functionally, that is a joint, and what you have is you have bony connection in the front of that foot. You have cartilaginous connection in the back of that foot. And that quarter is your dividing line between the two. So you've got stability here, and you've got movement, hydraulic movement back there. And so to me, this is a point of articulation. It's a point of articulation. It's a division. It's like the trailer hitch on that truck. It's gonna, think about an articulating tractor. That's your stress point. It's the most important point, but it's the most easily broken down point because of the stress it takes. And so if we miss our quarter, we've changed all of our stress levels in that hoof capsule. So we trim it to find the quarter, we shoe it to exaggerate the quarter. And that's my feeling. And to me, everything that goes wrong in a foot is usually a result of a failure in the quarter. What also is here? I said you've got bony connection and cartilaginous connection, right? So what's also here is your collateral cartilages. So you got a quitter in a foot. It's an infection of the collateral cartilage, right? You got, you need to put on a shoe that is going to support one side of that foot because of a breakdown in that cartilage. We've got almost everything that can go wrong is going to go wrong there. I exaggerate that with my shoeing in two ways. I exaggerate it with the idea of making sure that I'm locating my quarters in my appliance to match to what they are in the foot. And I also exaggerate it because you go follow my shoeing and look at the horses that I've shod over the past month. 90% of them will be 4 nails. And it'll be the number 1 and 2 nail holes and nothing behind them. I want movement in the back of that foot. And so people say don't nail behind the widest part of the foot. I don't even nail at the widest part of the foot. I'm going to fix that shoe to match the anatomy of this hoof capsule. So I want it fixed here and I want it mobile here. Does that make sense?
It doesn't matter the size.
It doesn't matter.
Hoof, so you're going 1 and 2.
I will typically go 1 and 2. I mean, I cheat that. I don't always do it. A lot of times when if I go back and do a reset,
that's on 5 weeks.
I use about half of my horses are on 4 weeks, half of them are on 5.
So going to 6.
What's that?
Going to 6.
I don't have.
Does that make a difference?
I don't have anything at 6, but it wouldn't make a difference. That in the business sense, when I first started shooting, and for years, I mean decades, I would drop a pin on my house, and I'd say I'll go 50 miles any direction to shoot a horse. Does that sound familiar? I quit doing that shit. It was the greatest thing I ever quit. It'd be better than if I quit these. Because what I would do is I would have a barn here. There's my house. I'd have a barn here. I'd go there 50 miles. And I'd spend all day there shoeing horses. And I'd get ready to go home. So I got a 100-mile round trip, right? Not that big of a deal. I'd get a call from this barn. Fluffy lost a shoe. We got to leave for Florida tomorrow. And I would go past my house at the end of a long, hard day, knowing that I had a cold beer in the refrigerator. I'd drive past my house and drive another 100-mile round trip to nail on a shoe. You can't charge enough for that. I don't care what you charge. You can't charge enough for that. And I'll guarantee you it will happen over and over again. You'll be going east 50 miles and somebody west 50 miles has an emergency. And you've just added 100 miles of fuel and over an hour's worth of time to go take care of it. And it'll make you not want to shoot. And then what it'll end up doing is it'll end up losing your customers and getting you a bad reputation. Because what you'll do is you'll be going back to the house and you'll get that call and you'll say, I just don't want to do it today. So you'll tell them, well, I'll get there tomorrow. And then you get home and you look at tomorrow's schedule, and I'll be damned if you're not back over there in the same spot. And you say, I don't want to do that. And you call them and you say, well, I'll get you tomorrow instead. And all of a sudden, you're putting them off 2, 3, 4 days, and you're getting a reputation for not taking care of and servicing your clients. And it'll end up biting you on the butt. And so what I did is I completely restructured my travel. This is my current work area. My house sits right here. I-65 runs there to Indianapolis. And I will shoot, and so that's south, and this is north. If you call me and you live 6 miles north of me and you've got a 30-horse barn and you want me to come shoe for you, I'm gonna give you a guy's name. I'm not going. I do not drive north of my house to shoe horses. I just don't. I'm not gonna drive past my house to take care of something. So I will shoe 20 miles east or west of I-65 until I'm 56 miles south. 56 miles south is where the traffic gets to be a nightmare, and I don't want to deal with it. So that's my shoeing area. So if I've got a shoe off, I'm going to be going past it, or I'm going to be getting close to it. I may have to add another 10 miles, whatever. But I am not going a different direction to take care of something that's going to make me no money and eat up my time. Because I've advanced thought out my geography and established the boundaries for my shoeing area. And so it's rare that anybody goes more than 24 hours with a shoe off, because I've got my boundaries set where I'm going to be going that direction. So if I don't get it within 24 hours, it's because I'm shoeing out of state or traveling out of state or sick. You know? So my service is 10 times better than it was when I was shoeing in circles. And I literally was shoeing in circles. I was running all over the damn place. And now I've got 40 miles wide by 56 miles long. And if you don't live in that area, I don't shoe for you. But then I have an area in Kentucky that I go to every other week for 2 days. But that's a different deal. That's one of those deals where I can charge enough to make it work. You know. Does that make sense? I did a clinic and talked about this in Michigan about 5 years ago, and I was up there again and did another clinic in the spring, and there was a guy named Josh that had been to my first clinic, and he said, would you talk about your shoeing corridor, because it changed my life. He said, you came in here and you talked about that, and he said, over a 2-year period, I reset my client base and established one of these deals. And he said, it changed my life. He said, I was getting ready to quit. I was so frustrated and so disorganized, and it was wonderful. So I hope it helps you a third as much as it helped him. But it certainly changed my life, and it made my reputation a lot better, because I was getting known for that guy that wouldn't show up, and so that's a bonus part of it. So I've got highs and lows in performance, and my battery is running low. So if you'll notice, we have a high-low cow here. It is an issue with quadrupeds. It's not just horses. You start running around, looking at cattle, looking at pigs. Pigs have horrible navicular quadrupeds, and you find that horses are not unique in the high-low condition. It is something that happens in all quadrupeds. Uh, so, oh, I'm having issues here. There. Asymmetry is a lack of or absence of symmetry, a lack of proportion, a lack of coordination of two parts, and it is not just in appearance; it's in spatial arrangement of atoms and groups within a molecule. So it's spatial, and it's affecting not just the appearance; it's the integrity of our capsules and the way that they function. And so that's an important thing that we'll get to. Uh, Here's what we normally see. Does that look familiar? All right. That's this foot's probably about a half a size smaller. If you're cutting 12 inches here, you're cutting 11 and a half here. Uh, you often, sometimes you'll get extreme cases where you'll have as much as 2 shoe sizes difference. And more often it's about a half a shoe size, where you're either stretching your low side foot shoe, or your ball door in your high side shoe. But what we miss when we're looking at it is, what's the most important thing, the most important difference in these 2 feet? What's that? No. The most important thing that's happening in that picture, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I was once, 1980, but in my opinion, the most important thing is the difference in distance from Duckett's dot to point of breakover on these 2 feet. That smaller foot has a longer point of breakover. See it? I did a horse last week, first time I'd seen him. I measured it out, looked at the proportions, and I had a 70-30 ratio. 70% of my length on my high foot was in the anterior portion of the foot. 30% was in the posterior. On the low foot, it was 40-60. That horse couldn't take his right lead at all. He would not take his right lead because he had an exaggerated long point of breakover on that steep side. So this is the first thing that I look at. I look at the overall shape is nice and round here. I've got a big sometimes prolapsed frog. It looks healthy. Sometimes it's just plump and bruised. But it's big. Uh, Over here, I've got fairly straight walls. I've got a long point of breakover, and I'll have a recessive frog on that foot. All right. So to me, that's sort of the classic low side, high side that we'll see. From the side, it'll take on an appearance somewhat like this, where your low side is going to be bull-nosed with an underrun heel. Your high side is going to be dished with a stacked heel. Yeah? So there's your appearance. Uh, there's an obvious low foot. Anybody see a black 511 bag around here? Yeah. See if I can get to where I can see that screen better. Uh, uh, so you can see this foot's migrated forward in the caudal aspect. By the way, you can see a blind quarter crack right there. It's not hard to find the quarter on that horse, and it's not hard to see that your quarter is functionally become a heel. Now, I told you before, I'm going to digress and go sideways and run around looking at squirrels and shit. So here I go. I'm jumping subjects. Wherever the seat of the corn is where your functional heel is. When that foot starts failing, your bars start migrating laterally and they start moving forward, and your seat of the corn moves forward. Wherever that seat of the corn is your functional heel. Everything behind that's like my family. It's dysfunctional as hell. It's not doing a damn thing. And so you've got to move that seat of the corn, straighten that bar, pull that foot back together to keep your quarter from becoming your heel. Does that make sense? I think that may be the most important thing I've said all day. All right. Now that was obvious what we saw externally in that capsule. What's going on the high side is not so obvious. You're getting pedal osteitis, you're getting lipping of the coffin bone, you're getting remodeling of the coffin bone because you've got a toe first landing. And this horse no longer has a dorsal aspect to his coffin bone. And that's simply from, well, in this case, it's a club foot, not just a high foot. But just as we see him torturing, we see the evidence of him torturing that low foot in the capsule. We don't see the evidence of the torture he's doing to the high foot because it's happening inside the capsule. So I think we've got to recognize that it's an important aspect of this condition to determine which foot's taking stress. And we always think it's the low foot, and it's more often the high foot. All right. What causes it? Mikey Van Heel says it's a long leg, short neck, and a grazing stance, and the fact that they have to do that in order to get their head down. I don't buy that. Uh, I grew up on ranches, and at any given point, we had between 200 and 250 horses, and I didn't see high-low issues on those colts that were born and raised out in the pastures. And it was only the ones when I got out of that situation and I started dealing with horses raised in confinement that I started seeing high-low. And so they say that it's not genetic, but as my grandmother used to say, they say is the biggest liar that ever lived. I think there is a genetic component, and we've all seen studs that had 60% of their colt crop would be this way, or a mare that every year would throw one of these. And I I shouldn't argue with science. I did at COVID, but I uh, I believe that they're wrong, that there is a hereditary or genetic component. But I also believe that it is modern horse keeping as much as anything. And so there's another grazing stance. The high foot will always be back, the low foot will always be forward. There's your normal appearance of the low foot and the high foot. And there it is radiographically.
Do you see some high foots on the left side and the low foot on the right side, or it's mostly left side?
Over the past 15 years indicate that it's about 70% right front steep, left front low.
I'm thinking like left-handed, right-handed.
And yeah, it's sidedness just as we're handed, you know. But it's also influenced by injuries, and and so that has to play in. And evidently, it is influenced by which side of the equator you live on, because uh, I had a fella from Australia that came up about 30 years ago, and we were shoeing horses. He said, "Lad, all your horses are backwards." And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, they're all high on the right. All of ours are high on the left." And so I guess I got on the phone and talked to a friend in Brazil and talked to several people about it, and evidently it is exactly the opposite if you're south of the equator. Kind of like the swirling in the commode or whatever. Right. So, uh, so there's your normal evidence or appearance of it radiographically, uh, and uh, there's a fella from New York that's made a lot of reputation and talking about limb length disparity, and a lot of people talk about this as being limb length disparity. I don't buy that either. Uh, you cut that leg off and boil it down and measure the bones. They're not different. They're not different. It's the same length. Uh, and the, to me, what it uh, is postural adaptation. It's posture, not anatomy. So people attribute it to genetics, injuries, conditioning, grazing stance, long leg, short neck conformation. Uh, Characteristics of the steep foot. It's got a toe flare, a dish, and sometimes a toe crack. It's got anterior bruising. You can often see the arch of the coffin bone in the sole. you've got a contracted hooky heel, you've got a recessive thrushy frog. They will, if they're going to pull a shoe, they're going to pull it on the steep foot, not on the low foot. You can fit that low foot as full and long as you want to, and they won't pull it. But you fit this thing, no matter how tight you fit it, you'll lose a shoe now and then. And they're unwilling to take that lead. Characteristics of the low foot, you'll have a bull-nosed dorsal wall, you'll have a crushed or underrun heel, you'll have posterior bruising, sometimes corns and such. You'll have a broad prolapsed frog. You'll have collapsed bars that will get shelly and want to migrate sideways. And this will be their preferred lead. They will want to be on this lead. So, there's your difference. All right. Performance issues. Unwilling to take the lead on the steep side, a rough, choppy lead on that steep side, unwillingness to change from the low side to the steep side, and a loss of suppleness. So you ride this horse in a 40-meter circle. His head's going to tick up. He's going to lift his head. He's going to fall in on the corners. He's going to fishtail around the corners. It's like riding a 2x4 around a corner. And he's going to be rough. So if you're a good rider on this horse, what you'll end up doing is you'll half seat him. You'll get up and you'll half seat this horse. And you'll be strong on your hands to keep him from falling in on the corners. So, on the other side, yes, pardon?
You talking about the short side?
No, the steep side, he's going to be rough and choppy. He's going to have his head up a tick, and he's not going to like being on that lead, and it's just not going to be comfortable. That's the clubby side. Now, on the low side, he may be stronger on the forehand, and that may be irritating, but he'll be supple and smooth. He'll want to lay on, and if you have him on a lunge line, he's going to be pulling on you. On the steep side, you got him on that lunge lead and you're popping your whip to keep him from falling in. All right. So it's a completely different animal. So on that low side, you're going to sit down and you're going to drive him. On the high side, you're going to half seat him. It's a completely different ride. And a good rider can hide it some, but it's still there. And he will never be as smooth on the high side. And we get away with murder on these horses in the dressage world. In the dressage world, you'll hear people all the time. They'll say, "Oh, this horse just doesn't have it to make it past third level." Or, "Well, the trainers can't get him past third level," and it's just accepted. And he goes off to be an eventer or whatever because he can't get past third level. Well, he can't get past third level because he can't do the lateral work, and most importantly, he can't do the tempi changes that are required, because what will happen is he'll fall into that low side lead and just, it'll be beautiful. He'll just supplely fall into that low side lead. He'll leap into the high side lead. You have to force him into it, and he'll kind of hop or leap into it. And a judge is never going to give him anything for it. So What we have to do is to try to get him comfortable on that steep side. The more we can get him comfortable on that steep side, the less he's going to abuse the low side. Because look at it. He's carrying 60 to 65% of his weight on the front end, right? Now, he's carrying 60 to 65% of that on the low side. That's the reason that capsule's destroyed. He's overworking the hell out of that low side foot. If we can get him more comfortable on that high side, get him to use that, then he quits abusing the low side. So that's the goal in shoeing these horses, is to get him more comfortable. So, like I say, he gets, here's your dressage pyramid, and it affects every level of the dressage pyramid because he's asymmetrical and out of rhythm. He's supple going one direction but not the other. Your contact and connection is completely different going to the right than it is going to the left. His impulsion is different on the high side lead. He's not driving near as hard. He can't go straight. Determines whether you are going to jab or punch, right? I mean, you're going to get your power from your hips and your pelvis, and your hip and pelvic position is going to determine whether you are going to jab or whether you're going to punch. The horse is doing that with his scapula and his thoracic sling because he doesn't have a collarbone. And so on his low side leg, he is punching. On his high side leg, he's jabbing. So you get extension on the low side, you get elevation on the high side. The arc and distance of the stride is the same. The length of the stride is the same, but the arc is different. So you get extension, elevation. Basically, the low side shoulder or scapula is free to move, and he will swing forward with that because it's abducted. It's abducted, and that's the reason it's that way, because it's rotated forward at the scapula. Now, on the steep side, he hits an occlusion because it's adducted. It's tucked in. So he hits an occlusion as he comes forward, and he picks up to get past that. So there's your difference in posture that ties in to the movement. And you had a question.
Not really a question, but I noticed I never paid no attention. But when you asked me to stand up, I looked down at my left foot, which went further than my right. When you told me to square up, my knees and my lower back ain't been it for very long.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can stand and talk to you all day long like this, but you get me to switch it, and I'm probably gonna head to the Cairo office.
Same with my right foot. I wear out my right shoe well before I wear out my left one. I can't stand square up to the right.
Postural difference, not an anatomical difference, not a muscular difference. It's postural. Now, if I go back to the way those feet looked, the shapes that I showed you in the beginning, back when I used to have a more criminal element to me, I would go into a boot store and I would get a size 12, and then I'd get a matching box of size 11 and a half, and I'd buy that. I'd put a 12 in the box for my right foot and an 11 and a half in the box for my left foot because those fit. So right now, I'm less of a criminal I'm more honest and ethical, and I now buy 12s for both feet. But I'll very often in the wintertime wear a thicker sock on my left than I do on my right. And because we're all that way. We're all that way. It's just not as exaggerated and obvious as what we see in these horses. So, and you'll get a remodeling and a lipping of that bone. And see,
Does that kind of also kind of affect the dorsal wall as well? If they're doing that, you start seeing a flare.
yeah, yeah.
Or you see
And
rings. Yeah.
so what you're seeing is the same thing that you're seeing in the capsule, where you got a dish in it, and you start getting that dish mirrored by the bone over a period of time, simply from all the stress on it. And so and a lot of that is from concussion rather than compression. At some, I'll digress. Hoof testing. We're all horrible at it. Veterinarians are horrible at it. Nobody does it right. So, but one of the things that you need to incorporate into hoof testing is concussion. Everything we're doing when we hoof test a horse is compression. Nobody does concussion. So you got to tap on that damn thing. But run your hammer around just like you're running your hoof testers around, and especially on the outer capsule. And I can't tell you how many horses I've gotten a reaction from concussion that were completely and totally negative to compression. Uh, Over half of the horses that have a coffin bone fracture will react better, give you a more positive response to concussion than they will to compression. So you're not hoof testing complete if you're only doing compression. So y'all got to have some questions at this point.
Kind of found that on my own. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I had a mare that really overweight mare. I mean, vastly overweight. Driving me. Horse check up good. Horse shows up late, and she said, "No, that came out, but we didn't want to be radiographed." She's laying on the left side. So she helped if we had radiograph, but check it out. It seemed like abscess to me is what we did. I went to look at it, couldn't find anything, tapping around, and I focused on the ground, and I was passing around the wall.
Yep.
The lateral toe quarter happened, and gradually my firm was reactive. Come back, it's an X-ray, and it's a fracture off in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll definitely find more response to fractures with concussion testing. So, yes, ma'am, Debbie.
Fracture off. You have so much protection around that foot. How much pressure does it take to fracture off?
I don't know. They say it takes less than 5 pounds of pressure to break a knee. So it's just the angle and the direction of it. And it's also the overall health of it. I mean, I got called out on a horse that I probably should have never gotten called on. They should have called somebody with a bigger gun. But he had spun around, hit a fence post, and his whole capsule came off. Well, you look at that capsule, and that pedal bone was sitting in there at about a 30-degree angle. So you didn't have good attachment to begin with. So, it's your overall health of the capsule and overall health of the foot. Lots of factors.
One more question. that same horse. So correct me if I'm wrong, maybe right, once we do game, but can an abscess or fracture, maybe as far as pain, the horse, as far as like, it could be one or the other, basically, we don't have radiographs, otherwise, can an abscess be the same thing?
Oh yeah, half of the people that call you and say, "I think my horse broke his foot," simply have an abscess.
Right. So in this case, where it was a fracture, the only difference I before I had any radiographs was that rapid onset of painless rather than
No, I find that a lot of times you'll get a rapid onset of an abscess, just like you would with a fracture. Uh, uh, we'll come back to that and talk about. Remind me, and we'll talk about hoof testing, abscesses versus bruises, and fractures and so forth. How about the high-low? Any more on that? How do you address it? There you go.
I have one question. Like, could you ever address it? You see, I ride gator horse.
Yep.
And could you ever address it to make a horse on that high side extend like you do on that low side?
You can.
Because look, I have a horse that's doing this. He's taking that foot. He's doing heavy. He's taking that foot and doing it. Wing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty common. But what you got to do is, first of all, the very first thing is to go back to that picture that we started with. Back where we started with that. It was much better on the slide. So, absolute first thing you have to address is this disparity in breakover. So, to match this breakover, you're wanting to mechanically match this feet. You can't aesthetically match them. You can't make them look the same visually. But mechanically, you can match them. So you've got to come in here and get your breakover back so that you have pretty much the same distance in point of breakover.
So if I try to take that foot and extend it, so it's not going to cut.
What's that?
So trying to take that foot and extend that toe is not going to cut.
No. What you want to do, what I did for years, decades, was I looked at these feet and I said, "Oh my God, look how small this thing is. I need to make it bigger." Right? And so I would try to make this foot bigger to match this foot. You can't do that. You have to accept the fact that it is smaller, and you have to adjust your point of breakover. Now you can do it in an ugly way and pull this shoe back and put a natural balance type shoe on there and get your breakover points to match. Or you can do it by building mechanics into your shoe and our combination thereof. But the bottom line is that you've got to get this foot backed up. Now, here's the cool thing. On an average high-low horse, it's not mild, it's not excessive, it's just average difference between them. What you will find is that this distance that you need to remove is approximately 3/8 of an inch. That'll be your general rule. Sometimes it'll be radically more than that. Sometimes it'll be mildly less than that. But on average, it'll be about 3/8 of an inch. So if I can back this thing up 3/8 of an inch, I can safely remove 3/8 of an inch more heel. Debbie.
When you're looking at the feet on the side and you're bringing back the mechanics, you use a rocker toe, you can use a line toe with the shoe and all that. Whatever. What about wedges?
I can't wedge them in my part of the country because they'll crush. Because I'm in the Great Midwest, and I start wedging anything, and it just it's you're spinning your wheels. If I lived in Utah or Nevada or New Mexico, I could wedge it, but I can't wedge them where I am. All right. But however much you back up off of the toe is how much you can safely take off of that heel. But you will always find that you can take more heel on that high foot than you first thought you could.
And
Now, if you find that you have gotten too carried away and the heel doesn't want to touch the ground anymore, you'll have to wedge it back up. But I've had to do that maybe 3 times in the past 10 years. Uh, and that's an indication that you've got true clubbiness in that foot, not just a high-low condition. Yeah, so
on the low foot, I find like how the heels will crush. I know we talk about the high foot, but on the low foot, I always get better pinching on the heels versus trying to build the heels. Like lateral extensions or anything like that.
if depending on how badly the heels are crushed on that low foot, you may have to do from one end of the spectrum to the other. I find that when my heels are crushed really badly, that if I do a hunter fit and pencil my heels, I'll get better recovery than if I try to put an onion heel on there or give it a bunch of width. And now my feeling on that is if you've ever sat in your little P-row and stuck a paddle in the water, what happens? You put a paddle in the water and you take a paddle and you slap it down on the water and it's going to vibrate. You take it and put it up on the blade edge, do the same thing. It's going to knife in and cut into the water. What are you doing with a horse's foot when you put width onto those heels? You're creating that same vibration that you're getting if you slap that paddle down on the broadside versus penciling and tucking those up and getting it to knife into the ground. So you're going to get less shock and vibration. And I think I recover more heels by penciling than I do by broadening. But again, I'm affected by my geography and the fact that my feet are overly hydrated 10 months out of the year. I have a recovery period from the end of July to the 1st of September where I have to sharpen my knives, you know. But I can use a dull knife up year round if I wanted to. So uh, so yeah, you're gonna try to recover the heel on that low foot. The best way you can recover it is by getting them to utilize and use the high foot better and quit torturing it.
Get the horse's way.
Yeah. Now the other thing that I will tend to do on the mechanics on these is I put in a toe tab. Are you familiar with a toe tab?
On the heel of the toe? I mean, on the tip of the toe?
Yeah. Basically, on a toe tab, you're going to come in, and I'm putting it on the wrong foot. I'm going to come in here. I've got a shoe on this foot, and I'm going to come in right here from the foot side, and I'm going to draw a source just like I'd be drawing a clip. Yeah? And so I'm going to draw me a source there, and I'm going to put me a clip right there. I'm going to broaden that toe up on the shoe, and I'm going to put me a clip there. I'm just not going to turn it and draw it. And I'm going to do that in the direction of travel. In the direction of travel. So if he's breaking over 5 degrees from center, I'm going to put a toe tab 5 degrees from center. And I'm going to, basically, I'm just making a clip. And and the reason I know that this horse is hitting toe first. I'm going to give him something to spin on. I'm going to, you know, I don't care if you make it look pretty and like a nice toe tab, or if you just broaden it out and it's ugly. It gives him something to turn on, and it because he's hitting toe first, and it'll get him more likely to engage his heels. And I'll pencil the heels on this shoe too. Oh yeah, yeah. If he's gonna pull a shoe, it's the high side. If you answer your phone and for lost shoes, and you say, "Oh, is it the right front?" You'll be right 70% of the time. People will think you got ESP. And this man's got extrasensory perception. Going on a left circle, and so you get those that are high on the wrong side, and they fail out on and injure out for the track their first race or before their first race. So that's Pat brought us. I've worked with him over the past 15, 20 years, and Pat has reached a point that when he sees those, he tells his trainers, make this one a turf horse, not a track horse, because they do better, they hold up better on the turf than they do on the running surface, on the dirt. What else? There's somewhere on the internet that you'll be just look up fractured P3 on the internet. There is one of the greatest images on there. Somebody did a picture, and it shows the 7 types of fractures that happen in a coffin bone. It's a great, great tool. But so what I was going to talk about is compression and concussion and hoof testing. And so we're taught to run hoof testers in a sequence. We start at a heel and we work around the white line to the other heel. And then we go inside that half the distance and work back around across the middle of the toe where the pedal bone will be and work back. And then we run our bars, and then we run our frog apex. Then we run from frog to wall, quarter to quarter, and then bulb to bulb, right? There's your hoof tester sequence. Most people don't do that very thoroughly, but they do that. That's all they do. What I do, and of course I do it the right way, is I take a buffer and I buff all the way to the hairline, and I trim the hair, and I go around and I palpate that entire coronary band after I've got it where I can visually see it. And any abscess that has worked its way up more than halfway, you're going to find it at the top, not at the bottom. So if it's been there and working its way up, you're much more likely to find it palpating that hairline. I'm going to pick up that foot from the bottom, and again, I'm going to compress and work my heel bulbs with my thumbs. And so I'm getting a whole lot bigger picture by doing those. Then I'm going to take my hammer and I'm going to go around and tap exactly the same sequence that I would with my hoof testers, squeezing, but I'm going to tap it. And I'm going to set it on the ground. And I'm going to go at the ground level and tap all the way around. I'm going to come halfway up that capsule and tap all the way around. And then I'm going to come up right below the hairline and I'm going to tap all the way around. And you will find more issues that way than you ever will simply with compression, because you're incorporating a whole different area of compression and you're incorporating a whole different concept of concussion. And, it's like, how many horses do you see that will have a grade 1, grade 2 lameness? You'll see them walk out across there. You won't see it. You bring them in on a concrete aisleway, and all of a sudden you say, oh, this is grade 1 lame. It's concussion. So you got to utilize concussion. It shows up. You're going to get a different response on turf, on sand, on limestone, on concrete. So I think it's important. The other thing is that, and this is so damn basic that I didn't figure it for a long time. Uh, there. So you got a white line here. And that white line goes up to the terminal part of the bar, right? So if you get reaction in that white line, what do you suspect is the condition? It's most likely an abscess, because you've lost uh, your lamina is your barrier there, and so it's interwoven or interdigitated. The minute that lamina starts weakening, whether it's seedy toe or whatever, a flare, distortion in the capsule, overgrowth, whatever, but that lamina starts stretching and weakening, and you get a loss of your barrier. And so water, urine, manure, dirt, gravel, all kinds of ick can work into that white line and create abscessation, because it'll then wall off and you'll have a pocket that's like a little natural petri dish to grow bacteria. And so anything you find there is most likely abscess. Uh, Now, over here in the solar region. What's most likely there? Bruising. If you get a reaction here, I mean, it could be an abscess, but the only way it's going to be an abscess in that area is if you've had some sort of an insult, like a puncture wound, or you have a abscess that is running laterally. And sometimes you'll get an abscess that'll start back here in the seat of the corn or thereabouts, or in the bar, and it'll run subsolar. And you get a subsolar abscess. And they're infuriating because he'll be lame one day, he'll be sound the next. He'll react to hoof testers one day, he won't the next, because it hits a pocket where it's got an area to expand, and it's no longer pressuring, and so he's okay. And then it grows, and that pocket's no longer there, and you've got pressure again. And so they linger, they run laterally, they're on again, off again, they'll drive you nuts. Uh, but but as a general rule, anything outside of the white line or inside of the white line is going to be a bruise, not an abscess. I can't tell you the number of people over the years that have told me, oh, I cut into that abscess and it bled like hell. Right? No, you didn't cut into an abscess. You cut into a bruise. And so I got wear on my medial toe on the right hind, and I've got wear on my lateral branch on the left hind. That hock's bad. And so I look at the wear pattern on these shoes, and I read those wear patterns, and I say, you know, you need to call the vet and get a flexion test done and see what's going on in this left hind, because I think you're starting to have a hock issue. And so the vet comes out. I've made him money. He's happy. He finds an issue and injects it or whatever. And now the horse owner is happy because her show season is not going to get interrupted because we caught it early.
Right.
And the horse is happy because he doesn't hurt anymore. So everybody's happy, and everybody except the horse owner made money. So reading shoe wear is probably the biggest loss that I have seen in our community over the past 30 to 40 years. Nobody knows how to read shoe wear. You know, I look at a pair of hind shoes and I say, "Oh shit, look at those bad stifles," or "Look at that bad hock," or whatever. And other people look at it and say, "Oh, throw that in the scrap pile." You gotta read the shoe wear, and but I think that's important.